Some viewers may find this disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Viewer discretion is advised.
Well then, good Sunday to you all, and good Sunday to you, Graham. I think Graham's lost his voice.
Yes, good Sunday to everybody.
There he is, he's here. We thought we had some problems there, didn't we, ladies and gentlemen? Well then, Graham, we are here for another episode of the Ben&Grem Show Sunday night show. It's 6 minutes past 7, slightly late, but we're here. That's the main thing. And Graham, we want to talk about face masks to start off the show this evening. Already hot under the collar, or hot under the mask. And Graham, we've got some new legislation coming in, haven't we? With the face mask.
Yes, we have.
It's been said.
It's from Monday.
From Monday, absolutely. From Monday, I will just go over to Scene Guys just to show you what's being said about face masks. And just bear with me for a moment. We'll flick straight over and have a read of this. Right then, so we have here new rules on face mask coverings coming in on Monday will help keep passengers safe. Passengers that don't follow the rules on face coverings will be prevented from travel. This was published on the 12th of June 2020. And the Department of Transport, which is one of the departments, of course, that organises and decides on how we go about these things, the Right Honourable Grant Shapps MP has also had involvement to this. And from the Monday the 15th of June, everybody must wear a face covering when travelling, of course, by public transport in England, under the new rules. Operators will be able to prevent passengers who refuse to follow the rules from travelling, and police will be able to issue fines of £100. Or over 3,000 extra staff will be deployed, from Monday to support the travelling public, reminding people about the need to wear face coverings and help passengers, vulnerable passengers. New rules require passengers to wear face coverings on all their journeys will come into force on public transport across England from Monday. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps has confirmed today on the 12th of June. So originally the information came out on the 12th of June, and yeah, that's quite a thing, Graham, isn't it? You know, that as of Monday we could be seeing people having to wear face coverings as a normal day of life, you know, as a normal thing.
Yeah, some people might say, why hasn't this happened a lot earlier?
Well, you could say maybe that is something that really should have... Do you know what, guys, before we start, I'm going to take this off because it's just too hot. Now, with that, okay, there are these very much hospital grade type masks which you can wear, but also government of saying how you can also look on their website. On the previous page there, I'll just flick back the government advice. You will see there is a email address at the bottom of the page that will actually take you to the information of which I've specified about face coverings, and more can be found there. But also you can actually make your own face masks, and that purpose would be to, or face covering actually you could say, which could be more comfortable. Maybe a, what do you call it now? What do you call it, Graham? It's one of those face coverings, isn't it? So you could have maybe a snood or something like that. But of
Yes,
course,
you can make them out of t-shirts.
yes.
And there's on one of the government sites there is a how to make a face covering from a t-shirt.
Indeed. Indeed. Well, that's it. So you're not just having to wear simply one of those face coverings which come from maybe the NHS or they're not very comfortable. They're very, very hot as well, especially if you're breathing, which we all need to do. So yeah, you can make your own, but of course if you make your own it might not be hospital grade, but bearing in mind regardless, you can still have that protection. It's better than no protection. But the point being is, as of Monday coming, we will see a ruling, and that's the ruling of how we are going to see potential fines if you're not prepared and wearing facial coverings. And it's all to do with obviously the virus and mitigating the virus and having it not spread any further than we have already seen. So that's interesting, Graham, isn't it?
It is. So
who would ever have thought? Who would ever have thought? There is something that I want to discuss as well, Graham. This is another matter on the agenda. We have also heard some really interesting information for those of you, sad to say, that have lost people in COVID-19 in this pandemic. And of course, those loved ones can actually take part in a remembrance. Just going to flick over to another screen, and I'm going to show you what we mean by this. It's an interesting one, because this is going to help people remember the people that they lost. Certainly the people that they lost in a situation where at this current time we can't visit. Now, even if that's visiting a funeral or even visiting certain headstones, depending on how busy certain places are, it's not so easy at the moment. So this website here is a website called Remember Me. And you can find this website at www.rememberme2020.uk. And the purpose of this website is that you can actually go on here. It's a government thing, but it's also done through, let me just understand this correctly, it's actually done through St. Paul's Cathedral, and they are involved with this. So it's a church and organisation. But the purpose of this is that you can actually click on this website and you can actually register a loved one or somebody who sadly passed away with COVID-19, and they can then be remembered forever longer through these means. So it's a really interesting thing. So yeah, check it out. It's www.rememberme2020.uk. And with that, you can just have a little look around the website and put some information in, and obviously look back at that. It's a bit of a nice touch as well, given everything that's going on, Graham, wouldn't you say?
it is. It's a special touch for family members to place a memory there for their lost loved one during this difficult time.
Exactly, Graham, and it's called the Book of Remembrance, which is nice. I mean, you get those in churches, don't you, where you can go into a church and you can, if you go and visit somebody like a tombstone or headstone or something, you can actually get, can't you, a book which you can actually look through, and it shows of all the people that are on the site. So this is something similar, but of course this is done obviously by the means of internet. So it's there for everybody. Anybody can have a look at it. Anybody can register an individual. And yeah, it's a nice little touch. I think it's a really nice thing to do, because it has been difficult, hasn't it, Graham? I said about how people have found it difficult, expressing their lost loved ones and not being able to go to certain funerals and things like that. It's quite sad.
It is really sad, because the last thing you want to do is to miss something like that. You should be there. You should be, seeing them off on their last journey. Expressing your love and your feelings, and that you're going to miss them, and you can't be there for that moment.
Exactly.
It's got to be extremely stressful for all families that are going through this.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more, Graham. And I think there's a few people coming in as well. And also, I think, expressing the situation around the Remember Me. Andrew Leonard White says firstly, hello, Ben and Graham. That's great. Thank you. And hello, Andrew. He also says the Remember Me website looks good to put loved ones on. Absolutely, I agree. The Royal Navy had something similar, one of fallen comrades. So that's interesting. It's very bright today, but very quiet on audio, Andrew says.
Oh
dear.
Am I coming through loud enough?
Well, you might well be now, possibly. But thank you, Andrew. It's always a pleasure to know that there are other people that know about this stuff. that can point us in the right direction. Elaine Slade says, Ben, I can hear well, Graham, very quiet. Ah, right. Well, that's actually a pain, isn't it? Because who wants to listen to me loudly and Graham quietly? It should be the other way around. Graham, can you just do a quick test for me a minute?
Yes. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing.
Okay. Well, I hope that's made improvements, guys. I mean, Graham doesn't get a word in edgeways with old Ben round here, but of course, when he does speak, hopefully you will be picking him up loud and clear, and we can carry on with the rest of the show. Graham is quiet. Andrew says Graham is quiet. Yeah, so Andrew and Elaine have both said, of course, Graham is quiet. Hello, Elaine Slade. Nice to see you in the chat. Sounds like you're in the bathroom, Graham. Are you in the bathroom, Graham?
No, I'm not in the bathroom. Sounds like I'm in the bathroom.
Yeah, one of the viewers believes you might be in the bathroom. I mean, that's fine.
No, I'm not in the bathroom. I'm not in the bath either.
No, well, not yet. You've had a busy day today, Graham, haven't you?
Yes, I've had an interesting day.
What happened to the ice cream?
The ice cream, it melted. All melted. Well, it wouldn't stick on. It wouldn't stay on the cone. So,
well,
it's a bit of a boring story. Not everyone really wants to listen to a story about melted ice cream.
I think it's what you had to do, wasn't it? Around the melted ice cream. It was the makeshift, wasn't it? It was how you got round it, which I thought was interesting.
Oh yes, I had to stop using cones.
That's right.
Using little tubs with a little spoon.
Tubs of ice cream and spoons for those that were going up to the ice cream van. Well, Graham, you improvised well there, I'd say. I mean, what can you do? What can you do? Well then, so yes, let's have a little recap. Just have a look at who we've got. We've got Andrew, we've got Elaine. We have Elaine and Andrew again. Nice to see you both. Graham, we have you too. Always a start. And of course, myself. We will quickly just talk about face masks. As of Monday, just to recap, it's going to be government policy that it's going to be expected that we wear face masks in public areas, but particularly around public transport. There will be fines issued if, of course, you're seen on public transport without a facial mask, and that could be a facial mask of a similar facial mask you might get from the NHS, or otherwise it could be one that you've made. But either way, you need to keep your face covered. Now, I'm assuming you need to see where you're going, so don't go too high with the eyes. Or with the covering, but just ensure that there's enough coverage of the mouth and nose as well. It's for your protection as well as it is anybody else's, and it's obviously to combat the spread of the virus, because we are still having cases, Graham, and it's still rife, isn't it? Yes,
yeah, but it's a really sad time. I'm lost for words really about it. It shouldn't have got to the stage that it's got to. You've only got to look at New Zealand.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, maybe we need another strong female prime minister. Forgetting the last one, of course, because she locked down on day one, and I believe they only had one death.
Well, she was strong in many ways, Graham, wasn't she? I mean, she did a good dance, didn't she? Do you remember? Theresa May.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
Wonderful dance.
Oh, yeah. Puppet on a string. Wasn't it?
Something like that. Don't know whose puppet she was. I think we do actually, don't we?
Oh yeah, we know whose puppet. Yeah.
We'll keep it nice and clean, guys. But no, I thought she had some good dances. And actually, didn't she make TikTok? Or was it not TikTok?
Yes, she did.
I think she did. I think she made TikTok. Ladies and gents, have you noticed? Actually, talking of TikTok, we have now since the lockdown, and we've been in lockdown now for 3 months. TikTok has become a thing, hasn't it? I mean, it came about where people did use it, but now everyone's on it. Everybody is on a bit of TikTok. I mean, everybody, even children. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? I've never seen so many funny things in it, actually. But do you know what? There are some things on there that are so repetitive, aren't they? I mean, I'm sure you all agree, especially if your children are playing these things over and over and over again. But yeah, I have to say, it's definitely taken everybody by storm, TikTok, hasn't it? We'll probably show you, actually, coming up to our next episode on the Monday night show tomorrow, we'll show you some clips of some TikToks for those of you that are interested. And we will cover some areas of that as well. But Graham, do you want to talk to the folks about anything before we jump onto the next agenda? Or are you pretty good?
No, I'm pretty good. Just to move on.
Good.
Please. Yeah.
Okay, well, we can indeed. Andrew says he's on TikTok now. That's good, Andrew. Well, I have an account on TikTok, but I haven't done much on there. In fact, I've just, like most people, I think it's just a case of you just watch other people do random things. I think the reason why I haven't done anything on there is probably because I know I probably can't. That's the fact of it. You know, I mean, some of these dances they're doing and some of these routines. What's that little shuffle thing, Graham, they do when they go up the stairs? That's crazy, you know? I don't do that. But no, it's great to see people having fun, and that's what it's all about. Yeah, right. Now, there is another thing we want to touch on, and it's a little bit controversial, but it's not, actually. It's kind of, I think, how people are feeling. It's kind of a mood that I'm going to describe, and a video of which I'm going to show you shortly. Me and Graham have composed for you, and it's something to do with statues. Now, of course, obviously, there's been a lot in the news recently about defacing of statues, and we've had certain protests going on. Not only did we have it from the said right side of the politics, which is the right wing, we've also had it from the very far left, which of course most would disagree with that. That's an opinion, you could say. But on the left in particular, it come about where statues had been vandalized. And now, from what I understand to that is that there is a feeling of this need to change history, almost make history more modern, in a sense that we can actually somehow forget the past to move on in the future and the present without having to remember certain things that people don't want to remember. Now, for example, good history and bad history. There are various types of history in this nation, in this country, and in all nations and countries, whereas can be or wish to be forgotten. But you'll see a video in a moment which will play, which will stipulate just why we need to keep good history and bad history all the same. And the reason for that is because it makes us who we are. We are now who we are. We have grown and evolved into what we are. And yes, there are issues around equality, and I think ultimately you could say there always will be. But what we've got to appreciate, certainly, is that everything will change in its time. It can't be done overnight. It's an evolution thing. And of course, I would say, Graham, that in reality, forgetting everything that's gone on recently, I would say, and it's fair to say, that this country, the United Kingdom, is a very tolerant nation. I would say, given the past sort of 20 years, I think, or even 30 years, you could say, I think things have changed. They have moved on, and people are a lot more tolerant to one another. And I think, yes, although there are issues in certain areas around race, of course, regardless of what type of race or racial activity, although it still exists, I don't believe it's half anywhere near what it used to be back in the day. And I think a lot of this stuff is a bit of smoke and mirrors with what's been going on recently. And Graham, what we know is that we had the left, if you wish, the BLM, they're out there and they're advocating and they're sending out a message. But of course, that come with destruction and, of course, attacks on our police and emergency services, which I don't think, it's just absolutely outrageous, and nobody can condemn that. And then we had retaliation, and like all things, you have one protest follows on to another protest. We had obviously the right wing coming out, and as much as it puts a lump in your throat to hear the national anthem and to hear the praise of Britannia and the praise of our country and all the things that we stand for, I think what's fair to say is no protest at this particular time with COVID-19 is responsible, given the fact that we should be in our said lockdown. But with that, both protests on both hands, you could say to yourself, well, which one was the more calmer of protests? And forget about the material for the moment. It would appear that although protests do go one way or another, and yes, yesterday and last week we saw instances of that, you will always get crowds or groups that will make it worse for others. For example, on the news this evening, there was reference to Nazi salutes from the right wing, which I'm sure maybe in some instances there were. You know, you're going to get those few people that will let you down. But then you've got, on the left side, you've got those that have made destruction of or damaged or defaced statues. Now, of course, they're the side you could suggest have let that side down. But ultimately, what we saw yesterday was just to remind people that this is our history, for good or bad, this is what it is, and this is how we should keep it. And Graham, have you got anything to pick up on that?
It's one of those subjects that that hits me quite hard. I get quite annoyed in some respects of what's going on. People are using this situation to they as you said, Ben, that they're using the situation. Some people are to cause so much havoc, and it's only that small minority of people.
Well, it kind of interferes with the message, doesn't it? For whatever message that these people have, they let themselves down in certain areas with certain attributes of their protest. I mean, for example, I think you can actually agree with me, Grem, and I'm sure there's many viewers as well, that there are situations around those that have defaced Churchill, for example. Now, Churchill was against racism. I mean, from history, he was against racism. He was, he didn't agree with racism. But it's not, I don't even think these people that have taken attacks to certain statues and wanting these statues disappear, I don't think they really know the history or the logic around why they want them to disappear. And I'd like to hear somebody that has some idea of why they feel that is responsible for them to be removed. Because quite honestly, it seems to me they're getting confused with the narratives. Because a lot of these people, a lot of these statues are statues for a reason. They are there to signify a change in circumstances or heroic moments. And of course, good or bad, I think it's absolutely right that they should be there to symbolise who we've become and how we've evolved. And of course, it does seem really sad to see Winston Churchill's statue covered up with steel plaques. I believe that's what it's been covered up with. When actually, as I said all along, he is somebody that is or has been very respectable. In fact, he was somebody who was on the left side of politics and the right side of politics. Winston Churchill was Labour and Conservative in his tenure. So, interestingly enough, I want to know and get into the mindset of those that believe that something like Winston Churchill's defacing is acceptable and why. I'd love to know that. We would love to know that. The Ben&Grem Show and the public would love to know that. But for the moment, I think what we could start suggesting, of course, is another matter of debate. Now, if you look up certain pictures of statues or certainly individuals on the internet, for those that have been sort of deemed successful people or people that we look up upon. What is strange, and I came across a website today, and I haven't got it. We can have it for a later show. We can show you where the source came from. But there was a situation where Winston Churchill had been blacked out, greyed out, wasn't it, Graham? I mean, from the from the list of those, I mean, Adolf Hitler was very much visible, but then you had Winston Churchill greyed out, and I thought, well, that's just bizarre, surely. I mean, the narrative is very, very, very confusing, and it's becoming very, very messy. I think somebody needs to talk to someone about some understanding on this. I think we need to be spoken to about this, don't we? Because it's confusing. It doesn't make any sense, guys. It really doesn't.
It doesn't make any sense. I mean, personally, I do feel that this is becoming rather political.
Yeah.
I mean, I was watching the last, the most recent episode of is it the Andrew Marr Show? No, it's not the Andrew Marr Show. I was speaking with you about it the other night, Ben.
The Andrew Marr Show?
No, it wasn't Andrew Marr. It was the other chap.
Question Time?
No.
Teletubbies?
No, not Teletubbies. I haven't seen Teletubbies for years.
Are they still going?
I don't know. Maybe they've been banned with like everything else.
Well, isn't it a shame? I mean, how many things are we knowing at this moment in time, or we've come to know, that is now going to be taken off air? Graham, you know about this. You and I spoken about this the other day. So we've got potentially, is it Only Fools and Horses, or is that in the midst of things, potentially? I mean,
it's been brought up. It has been brought up over the last couple of years. There's been rumblings about it. And that is really one thing that really they ought to just leave be, because everything actually, isn't it? I mean, it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. It really is to go about the way they are trying to rewrite literally everything. You just can't do it. It's the past. It's happened. Yeah. We've moved on, and we've learnt from. I mean, let's put it this way, you don't see any more programs filmed the same way, directed the same way, scripted the same way. You don't see that anymore. Why? Because we've evolved. We've moved on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what's also been moving on is that we've seen a number of different groups materialising, given what's been going on in the last recent weeks. We Are Monument, which is to protect statues and the British way of life, culture and historic values. It's a website which, or an organisation which people can get involved with, which will sort of bring people together. So it's not a political organisation. It's something that people can get involved with will pull people together without having too much political influence, but of course puts people in the hat of being able to understand the real values and understanding of the country and the way that history works, and protecting as well, being the guards of our nation. So yeah, it's a really, really good website. And check it out. There's some information there. It's going to be great. It's going to turn out really well. We've also got some other bits and pieces to go over, just rushing through a few things. But before we jump on to the next subject, I want to bring you back very quickly to the statues. And as I said, we have a video we want to show you. It's from a gentleman called Henry Bolton. He only the other day did a video about statues. And of course, it puts another complexion, another understanding to the matter, and I think it's a very valuable piece of information. You can find the information on the information of the video, but you can also see where the original information came from. But without further ado, Graham, shall we show the folks about the video, and of course get them to understand a little bit more about what's going on? I think it would be really helpful. Thank you very much.
It will be.
Enjoy, everybody.
Hello. I'm talking to you in response to the protests that we've seen in London and elsewhere over the last week or so. These protests have been in support of Black Lives Matter. And for the record, I believe that all lives matter. I don't believe that the lives of any one particular group are more important or have a higher priority than those of any other group. But these protests, although they've in the main been lawful and peaceful, have occasionally turned violent. Police officers have been attacked on the streets, and our public buildings have been vandalised, and national monuments have been defaced. Now, this is my land. It's my nation, and these are our people. This is our society. And these islands may be small, and our society may be slightly broken, but they're ours, and I am proud of them. I'm proud of my heritage, and I believe that I am a beneficiary of my cultural inheritance as a Briton, and I am a trustee of that inheritance for those who shall come after, for future generations. So for that reason, I shall defend these islands. I shall defend my heritage and my nation's history, culture, and our collective identity as Britons. There have been shameful episodes in our nation's past, but as a mature nation, we learn from our mistakes. A mature nation does not erase its mistakes, it learns from them. And we have to admit, racism and inequality do still exist in some places, and we have to stamp them out wherever and whenever we find them. But let us also be perfectly clear. It is a matter of fact that the United Kingdom is one of the freest, fairest, most open and most equal countries in the world. Now, Lord Salisbury, a former Prime Minister, was the man who brought about the legal abolition of slavery around the world. And he is one of many commemorated by statues across the country. Statues that those on the left seek to remove. Baden-Powell is another such example. He created a global movement to teaching generations to serve their communities and to put their communities and other people before themselves, to provide help and assistance to those who need it. In my view, that's a pretty worthy thing to do. But they want to remove his statue as well. The removal of these statues is nothing but utter madness, and any nation that allows it is daft, utterly daft. It's allowing its history, its culture, everything it's built on, to be undermined. Now, many of those who are commemorated by these statues and monuments around the country were, of course, flawed characters in many respects, but so are many leaders today, on all sides of the political spectrum and in all countries. But we as a nation have learnt from the mistakes of these people. Likewise, we have benefited from their achievements. And it is because of them, the mistakes we've learnt from, and the things that they have done for the nation, that we enjoy the laws, justice, values, freedoms, and indeed prosperity that we do today. To tear down these statues is an attempt to erase the history, both good and bad, on which our identity as a nation, as the British nation, is based. And in that way, it is no different to the Taliban destroying the ancient Buddhas of Bamyan. To remove these historic monuments is no less than a politically motivated act of cultural terrorism. And that is targeted against the identity and the history of the British people. And we, the British people, are a mixed people, as we have been over the centuries. This is not about colour. This is about the identity that we all share in these islands as the British people. What happened to Mr. Floyd was an abomination, and those responsible have quite rightly been brought to justice and will be facing the courts. And for many reasons, I support national police reform in this country. But the law must be honest, just, reasonable, and fair. But it must also be firm and unbending. The law must meet the needs of all people, not just a vocal minority. And it must be clear so that all people may know and understand what the law is and what the consequences for breaking it are. The law is not to be made or applied in any person's favour or in the favour of any group. It is to be applied equitably for all who live in this land, regardless of race, religion, colour or gender. And likewise, the statues in London do not belong to the Mayor of London, and they do not belong to the people of London. They belong to the nation. It is not for the mayor of one city or the people of one city to decide their future. Now, as I said, I believe in Britain, and I am very proud to be British. My vision is of an outward-looking nation, a nation in which all its people and communities, no matter who they may be, all feel confident, optimistic, prosperous and secure in all respects. But that future and that vision are under threat. In an echo of the burning of the books in Nazi Germany, television programmes and films are now being censored. Here in the UK, the Black Lives Matter campaign has been allied with Momentum and people on the extreme left. Their crowdfunding site claims to be guided by a commitment to dismantle imperialism, capitalism and white supremacy. None of us support imperialism or white supremacy. This is a political agenda that they are laying out. It is not a call for equality. You see no demands in relation to equality. It is a demand, it is a call for a socialist revolution driven by those on the extreme left. So, we must protect our history and our heritage, our culture and our identity, and perhaps even our very future under the character of the British people. The future of this nation and the welfare of our people and its world leadership role in justice, fairness and firmness depends upon ourselves. Now you may say, but again, we're scattered individuals and everything is against us. Politicians, money, the press, television, all are arrayed against us. And so they are. You are quite right to think that way. I don't underrate them, and nor should you, but neither should we despair. Because you, like I, know something of the history that some people seek to remove. You know something of the record and the achievements of the British people over the years and centuries. And I call on you all now to come together. We all must. Small bands of people joining in absolute resolution, in determination, giving of ourselves completely and saying, Britain will live. Stand firm. And you can stop this. You can stop this assault on our culture, our history and our identity, and quite possibly our way of life. We will rouse this will of the British people, the vast majority who are appalled at what they see now. And in peace and in goodwill, but with firm resolution, and within the law, and in fairness to all the people of these islands, no matter who they are, we will do what has to be done, because it is the will of the majority of the British people. That is the British people of the past, of the present, and those of the future. My friends, nothing has been done yet without people coming together in collective action, individuals banding together in belief and will and resolution, and making their collective action and building a popular movement to do it. And that's what we have to do now. We have to mobilise, and we have to create a movement. We have created a Facebook page, the details of which will appear at the end of this speech. Please follow that page. We also need a British Culture Protection Fund, a fund to protect our cause, to project it, and if necessary to take legal action against local authorities and councils seeking to remove our historic and national monuments. So whatever it may be, please donate what you can. A website will follow shortly. And in the meantime, because time cannot be lost, our monuments are already being removed. In the meantime, I call on you to come together in that resolution and determination that I talk about. Organise yourselves. Organise yourselves into small bands of yeomen to guard our national monuments night and day. But do not give ammunition to our opponents. Do not use violence. Do not violate the law. But remember, the willful and unauthorised destruction of public property is an act of criminal damage. It is a criminal act. Furthermore, the use of unlawful force against yourself is an assault if you are going about your normal, rightful and lawful business. And you may use reasonable force to protect yourself in doing so. Obey the instructions of police officers at all times. Be ready to film attempts to damage or remove any public property by anyone. To help organise yourselves and enable collective and coordinated action and mutual support, please form your own Facebook groups within the national page. But do not post abusive words, images or symbols. Rise above the tactics of those who seek to harm our national heritage and identity. Remember, this is about the culture and history that we have inherited as the British people. It is ours by right. We are the trustees of that heritage and culture and the identity that we must pass on to those who follow. We are the British people. We should believe in Britain. We should believe in ourselves because, as I said earlier, we know something of the achievements of Great Britain.
Well then, there you have it. Grem, very interesting speech by the Henry Bolton. Certainly, the British League, you can find that. If you have a look on Facebook, you'll see the British League. Have a look and watch the videos that are up and coming. And as I said earlier, and as we spoke of earlier, there is a group or a number of different groups at this moment in time that are forming. But We Are Monument is a new group which is coming up and about, which of course is not, and as I said before, political, but actually a group that people can involve themselves with and can do the very thing as Henry discussed, which is to be the guards of our nation and to ensure that we protect our culture, our history, and the present and the future of what Britain is all about. So please do check that and and get involved. That'd be great to see you all on board. Grem, we've had a lot going on, really. I mean, we've had coronavirus, haven't we? We've had face masks, we've had the news, we've had the riots. I mean, it's pretty hectic time, wouldn't you say?
Definitely a very hectic time, mate. It really is.
It's like it's never ending.
Well, we don't need it. No one needs this. Everyone in the nation, we do not need to be dealing with all this. On top of the coronavirus, the government should be concentrating and being left to be able to concentrate on that one topic.
Absolutely.
All these other bits. It's not going to turn out well.
No, not at all. And it's just added pressure, Graham, isn't it, for the government? They've got a tough job as it is with COVID-19 to have to also deal with the mayhem that we've seen on the streets. It doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, it doesn't. I mean, the money that they've already spent, rightfully, to fight this invisible enemy.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a real shame.
Yeah.
And Graham, there's something else I want to just mention. It's another topic for discussion, and I hope everybody will just have a moment, certainly, for the particular subject. 3 years ago today, Graham, the tower, the Grenfell Tower, you'll see on your screens, the Grenfell Tower was burnt. As you remember, there was a fire, and it was all to do with the cladding, as they say. It was necessary for them to change the way that the cladding was working upon, how what sort of setup that they was to use on these walls and surfaces. And of course, we can learn a lot by that in the fact that we've seen so many people lose their lives. And of course, 3 years, sorry, today. I mean, that's pretty big, Graham, isn't it? 3 years ago. It's a long time ago, isn't it? It doesn't seem like 3 years ago, does it?
And it's going to be overshadowed by these individuals taking themselves to London to cause havoc.
Absolutely. And you're talking of havoc, Graham, I think you touched on something there. I mean, certainly when we talk of havoc, we talk of the potential spike of the second wave of COVID-19, which none of us want. Absolutely not want. But there's been a lot of people out. There's been a few thousand people out in the past week, and it's quite a concern, really. I will tell you, Graham, it's also been noted, I've heard from a reliable source, that we are still seeing cases of people going into places like Ashford Hospital, William Harvey, with COVID-19. It's not gone. It's still there. So it's still a thing. So we mustn't be under any illusion to think that this is gone now, because evidently there are still cases, and it does worry you that, of course, London, being a big place that it is, and the amount of people that do come from London, it worries us, certainly, that there has been these protests that they've had. And they have been close, these people. Yes, some have been wearing masks, Graham, haven't they? But there have been a number of people on the news, certainly we've seen, that haven't been wearing any protection, not just for themselves, but for others. So it's worrying, really. It really is. Great video. Andrew says great video. Absolutely. Thank you, Andrew. Yes, it was indeed. We felt it was necessary because, I think what's clear, Andrew, and Graham was, I'm sure he agrees, is that, this whole situation that's gone on in the last week or so, regardless of what side you sit on, and it's not about that at the moment in this particular subject of discussion, it's more about the fact that it's very, very messy. I mean, we can sit back and try and work out why people are doing these things, and they've all got different ideologies, different reasons for it. And I think realistically, it's been muddied somewhat in exactly why people are doing what they're doing. And it has been, it seemed, to be a political movement, it seems, an agenda, which I think to start with was a bit off, I think it's fair to say, and then it's been escalated upon. And then, of course, then we have retaliation, and you get it all the time. You have that retaliation, and it's sad. It's sad because right now, we don't really need that sort of thing going on when we've got a pandemic about. But I think Henry particularly is certainly somebody who is passionate about his country, is passionate about how we conduct ourselves day to day, and he, like many that had served in the military and also have been part of the public sector in authoritative work, would understand the passion they have for things like statues, which of course have a sentimental value. Not everybody would see that, and some people wouldn't care less. I understand that, but there are absolutely reasons to believe that we do need to protect these things, and for very, very good reasons, good or bad. They are, and they will always be a part of what we are today. But no, Henry is somebody that can very much put the point across, and he's doing a fantastic job with that, and a few other things as well in the meantime. And I wish him all the best in his future endeavours on those very subjects and otherwise. Grem.
Yes, we do wish Henry the very best. He's an extremely intelligent man, and he's got a wealth of experience in a lot of areas. So it'd be worth to follow.
Absolutely. Graham, we've got a question coming from Lee Turner. He says, Beijing in China has announced another COVID breakout. That's a very shame. Do you think that Britain using the herd mentality policy will turn out to be the best policy as other countries end up with a second wave? Do you want to start with that?
Oh, you can. You've got the information, so...
Interestingly, so that typifies the point, doesn't it? Certainly that, of course, we do have still cases around the world. Not only do we have cases in the UK still, it seems, but we still have maybe cases in areas like China where it's been said, and I will say it's been said, that the virus started from. But let's just say, interesting point, Lee. Yeah, I mean, of course, now when we're coming into a time of relaxing lockdown rules, and of course, yes, still using social distancing, which is a reasonable thing to do, to think that actually we could be seeing furthermore outbreaks, does that mean really we are going a bit too quick on the matter? I would say...
I think maybe that they really do need to look at the flights,
yes,
especially coming from that area, because... at the moment, they are locking down certain provinces, aren't they? Certain towns and certain cities they are locking down in China.
Indeed.
Where it's peaked again. It is a concern, because that's one thing that we should have done as a nation. All flights should have been immediately stopped, like they were in New Zealand by their Prime Minister.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Graham, I mean, you know, this thing about herd mentality, I mean, of course, it was questionable, wasn't it, recently, about whether it was the right thing to do, when it was suggested by the government to have herd immunity, and it was asked of whether was it responsible, you know, given that it might put a hell of a lot, or sorry, let me excuse my words, put a huge amount of pressure, on the NHS, National Health Service. So, of course, that was feared upon, and therefore felt that we shouldn't certainly adopt the herd mentality of herd immunity, and so to protect our NHS. But actually, you could say maybe
it may work out. It may work.
Indeed, it might do, because what we do know now is that those who have already had it, I suppose, can still be potential carriers, Graham, but of course they can't necessarily have the virus again. So if everybody was to come down with it, and it was controlled, then actually you could ask yourself, maybe it is the right way to go forward, given a potential spike and another second wave. But you know, it's going to be tough, and of course it will be coming down, won't it, to the scientists and to the experts to ensure that they, you know, improve in maybe certain areas that they failed in, and obviously have learnt by our recent situation, and maybe try and improve things going into a potential second wave. But I think it's fair to say, given what, you know, Lee has said about the news in Beijing, and of course obviously there has been, as I said, other cases that have been known in Kent, and also with the protests that we've seen over the last week or so, I think it's fair to say that there is a real threat to a second wave. And as much as that's a real shame and sadness to many, I do feel for particularly the elderly because, as we know ourselves, that it was said that they might have to stay into a further isolation until the end of the year. And they're absolutely itching to get out, you know, and see family. And it's really tough for them, you know, and it's tough for all of us. So, yeah, I fear for the elderly generation. I mean, they've been through quite a bit with this already. What do you think, Graham? I think it's tough, isn't it? The second wave.
It is tough because it brings on, especially with individuals that are in the early stages of dementia. But it does bring on that cause. It is a concern for their loved ones, seeing their family members go through the changes that they are and not able to actually intervene and deal with it.
Absolutely. It's not easy, Graham. It's really not easy. But, you know, what can you do? What can you do, eh? And you must feel their frustration, like many, that, you know, is it necessary to go out and do all this writing? I mean, protests is what they...
No, I know. It isn't, no. It isn't. It's not necessary to do it. It's simply not. The answer is no.
No, not at all. Okay.
Not at this moment in time. It is unacceptable. And in fact, the government should not have signed it off. They should not have said yes. They should have not have done it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I certainly don't want to get caught up in the politics of it all, Graham, but I do want to mention, and I, you know, like all of us, I'm sure some of us tuned in to seeing the riots or protests in some cases, if you want to see it that way, over the weekend. And I think what's clear is, now I saw these, you know, comments by people saying, well, it's strange because we're seeing more police officers out this weekend, but we didn't see half as many police officers and law enforcement out the previous week when it all initially started. Now, I don't know.
It wasn't just that. They were actually out in riot gear.
Yeah.
This weekend.
That's right.
And not the previous weekend.
Which doesn't seem to make sense because as much as, now from my understanding, forgive me, and I'm not going to lean on any political side here, but what I don't understand is that the threat was initially to begin with, because it was the destruction of statues, it was the request to remove statues, it was activities on officers, police and horseback. That, to me, should say that there is a need for force on the authority side. Now, I fear, and it's just my opinion, but it means nothing at the end of the day, but I do fear that with everything that's gone on in America, did the police maybe, you think, feel that they couldn't respond how they maybe should have responded simply because they thought maybe it would spark another potential hate campaign towards the authorities? For example, we understood that they kneeled, which was not requested of the police force. In fact, it was very wrong for police to kneel in that situation, simply because that is an act of politics, and of course they should never be involved in that sense, but actually remain impartial at all times. So that I understand from particularly the commissioner in particular is very upset with that situation, and it'd be interesting to see what she does with that later in time when an inquest maybe comes about within that. But also, you know, my point being is, even with the protests of yesterday, you know, it seemed a lot more peaceful. Now, I'm not talking about the politics there, like I say, but it did seem to be a bunch of guys and girls screaming and shouting British voices, basically, a bit of unity and a bit of, you know, it sounded like, I don't know, it sounded Britain, it sounded British, it sounded great, it sounded together. You know, apart from the huge crowds, which I don't condemn, I think it's right, you shouldn't be getting crowds like that in a situation where we've got a pandemic, so you can't praise them for that, certainly. But on comparison of the 2 weeks or the 2 weekends, I would say that last weekend was a little bit more relaxed, wouldn't you? I mean, when you take what went on, I think to see the response that the authorities had, I thought was quite significant in the second weekend. And as you say, Graham, the first weekend was somewhat less. I just find that rather bizarre. And I don't like to say it's politics. I would like to hate to believe it's politics. But at the end of the day, I don't think ultimately people on the weekend that's just gone, in my opinion, came out because they wanted to cause trouble.
No, you know,
they
didn't.
They purely wanted people to realise that we're not going to stand back and put up with this. You know, this is us, this is our country, leave it alone. And That's it, really. And I think
Maybe they just have got. Everyone's got their limit, and if you're just sitting back at home in your armchair and you're watching the news and you're seeing that certain groups, if you'd like to say, toward on the left side of the political spectrum, are dishing dirt on our status as a country continuously, and then go the next step further to use the situation from America to then take that stage further, where they will then attack memorials and demand removing of this and that, etc. It's just not. It's not acceptable. It really isn't.
It's not at all. And Lee says, back to statues, he says, I've noticed that activists in support of vandalising the statues are being called campaigners. But over the weekend, the veterans who went in to supposedly create a ring of steel were called racists. It's ridiculous, isn't it? It really is. And I said, didn't I, last week or so, in a Facebook post, I think I said along the lines of that, if this continues, then expect a rising of people to argue their anger from it. I'm just hoping that they wouldn't do anything too negative in that. Yeah. But some will, as you said earlier on. There is some on the right, and there's some on the left that will go that far. But going back to the discussion, with what happened last weekend, when the media reported it in the papers, with the exception of the Daily Express, I believe. Yeah.
There was no mention of far left fascism and etc. There was none of that. Then this weekend's developments. And straight away, you are hearing the word racists, fascists, Nazis, but the thing is, what the media have got to understand is it's not going to wash anymore with the majority of British people. It will not wash anymore because those terms are being used incorrectly time and time again. People have had enough. I mean, you've only got to look at the result of 2016 for the referendum. People have had enough, and they're not buying in on certain media outlets. And you think people learned their lesson by now, but no, they still carry on reporting the way they are.
Absolutely. And Lee said, just to top off his point, he said, are the media to blame for inciting violence? I think the media are steering it, a little bit. Graham, what do you think? I think they are.
Yes, they are, by the terminology that they're using. And it's like, for example, on Good Morning Britain, Piers Morgan, everyone who knows Piers Morgan knows he's quite a loud chap. And I like to listen to him. Mm-hmm. But he's sort of drifted further left all of a sudden. But he for quite a while, he's been sitting in the centre side. He's been quite broad church, and then the situation has come along in America, and he's shifted further left. And at the same time as the rest of the media have enhanced their working on the left side of the equation, and it's awful.
It is. It is awful. But like I say, I think what we have to remember is, regardless of the sides that are involved here, whether it's far left or far right, I mean, for what I saw at the weekend, I wouldn't have said that was far right activity myself personally. I would say it's right, centre right, certainly because, I think it's fair to say that actually all of us should be proud of calling out our country as being prosperous and secure and a positive looking nation, a country that is proud to be British and to be of its history and who we are and what we've become. And every part of us, regardless of whether we believe in it or not, is of what's become from the history that we had once before us. So we have to realise that. And I think, you know, like I say, from the weekend just gone, I think, okay, you're going to get a handful of people that will play up. Of course you will. Like in all things, you know, you get football stadiums where you get football crowds. You know, mostly want to go out and watch the football. Yeah, they might have a chant and a swig of the old beer and a little laugh and a joke and a nudge here and there, but you always get one or two that will let the side down. And that's the same with everything. So it's not about, oh, it was the far-right protesters, because actually they weren't far-right protesters, most of which were very civilised people. They were just fed up with seeing what's been going on in the last week or so, because actually they feel it's unacceptable. There's nothing wrong with that. And on the subject on the left, there were, I'm sure, many that were equally responsible. But of course, as also, there was people on that side that have to be called out as equally as being troublemakers, simply because they've defaced and created havoc and wanting to see removal of architecture, which is actually there for a purpose, not because of us necessarily, because it was put there way before we were here, but it's part of the country. It's the country. You can't lift the country up and move it or change it. It is what we are. We are what we are. You know, so, but I think the media have a role to play in this, and I think the media need to be sensible, and I think they need to get serious. And I think they've got to start talking about these issues on both sides mutually, not take precedent over one side or another. And that's the problem when you've got biased media. It has to change, Graham. It has to change, because it's not fair, it's not right, and it doesn't make people right or wrong. Media are there to report. They're not there to take sides. And that's all of you out there all need to remember. You are journalists for a purpose. Yes, to make money. Yes, to sell stories. But you're there to sell stories. You're not there to lean politically towards one side or another. And to the police, as it's been noted, should not be, as I said earlier, should not be leaning from one side or the other. They should be straight down the middle, independent, for the Queen, working for the country in a very sensible and very down the middle, impartial approach. Anyway, with that said, Graham, what else have we got to talk about?
You tell me.
Well, I was waiting because I think there was something you were going to mention, but yeah, I mean, just as a rundown of things, I think it's been great. We've had a few discussions on the matter, haven't we, over the last few weeks about COVID-19 and about, you know, the situation. I mean, of course, it's a new development, we know, with the statues and so on, but there has been an incredible amount of stuff going on recently, which has a huge negative impact on people. And of course, we do feel that we need a bit of positivity somewhere, don't we? I mean, you know, before I start talking negative again, before I talk about the economy, I would say, you know, what's going to happen? We need a good piece of news, guys, don't we? We need something positive to happen. But we got to start looking. I mean, whether it's the right thing or not. What do you think, people in the chat? I mean, do you think it's the right time for us now as a country to start thinking about going forward and restarting the economy, getting back out to said normality, getting things operating again? I can say on that subject, before we divulge much further, that certain zoos around the country are looking to open up again. Chester Zoo, I believe it's Chester Zoo, I think it was last few days, they were completely concerned, worried about the impact that coronavirus and the pandemic was having on their industry. And of course, they had to make decisions at one point to decide whether to put certain animals down because they couldn't afford to keep of those animals. And it was a matter of how they were going to go about doing that. Well, good news is, and it's come out from government as well, that Boris has mentioned that these certain zoos certainly are able to start again functioning because of the impact it's having on them. It's actually going to have a lot of zoos close, and sadly a lot of animals are going to lose their lives unnecessarily, you could say. So they are now trying to bring these back into movement and operation again, and I think that's a good thing for us, I suppose. You could say that it's something for us to do. Maybe, you know, we can go out and take a trip to the zoo. It's a bit of freedom, a bit of a walk, and a bit different, because none of us have been to the zoo for at least 3 months. So that's another thing. So there's some positivities in that, and of course, for the animals' sakes as well, we need to make sure that they are looked after. Isn't that right, Graham?
It is, and that was a really sad story, wasn't it, about them having to look at their stock of animals and decide which ones were going to have to be put to sleep. It's a really sad situation, because they obviously get their finances from ticket sales. So if they're not getting the relevant funds in, then it's going to eat into their emergency budget, and once that emergency budget's gone,
That's
they're
it.
not going to. I don't see they'll be getting a grant or anything to boost them out of the situation. It's just really, really concerning.
Absolutely, absolutely, Graham. I can't say any more, no matter otherwise. You're absolutely right. It's a sad state of affairs, and of course, we are going to see activity certainly in that industry or department. But with talk about the economy kickstarting again and getting us back to a said normal, or at least a possible normal, and that does not include obviously the use of face masks. As you know, it could be something of a normal life, wearing of face masks in our normal day-to-day life. So of course, with that, we're seeing that yes, we could be getting back to normal. But again, as much as we have to start certain areas of our economy again, even if it's not correct in the time frame to do so simply because of the virus, I think the country is going to be left with no choices in certain areas. So it's going to be interesting to see, isn't it, Graham?
It is going to be very interesting to see. Let's hope that they can get themselves out of this situation as quickly as possible for the sake of the animals.
Absolutely. Well, Graham, it's been a wonderful evening again. Sunday evening, we've had a good time, haven't we, Graham? We've discussed a few very difficult subjects, it's fair to say, haven't we, really?
Yes, we have, and I've been extremely tired, so I've not really been totally 100% with it. So I do apologise, Ben.
Graham is always with it, Graham. You're always with it. I mean, there's nothing about you that isn't with it. Apart from your voice, though, Graham. Apparently, there's a few people in the chat have said that there's been an issue with the volume today. So we do apologise for that. And hopefully it hasn't made your viewing experience somewhat of a difficult experience. But, Graham, we'll have to look into that, won't we, this sound thing? We'll have to look into that.
Just look at this. Don't worry about what I sound like. Just look at my face.
That's all we need, isn't it? That is all we need. Who needs to listen to Graham when you can just look at his face? I mean, honestly. So hang on, Graham, just jump before we leave everybody here. I just want to round something up. So you said something about earlier. You said something about ice cream. What's going on with this ice cream then? So you had the cones, yeah? And so what happened? Why couldn't you use the cones? Explain to the viewers.
Well, the whipping machine decided to not freeze down enough, so it wasn't hardening up, so it wouldn't stick on the cone. So I had to change to scoop ice cream. Now that was okay for about three and a half hours, but then when you keep opening the freezer doors and taking out the boxes, the tubs of ice cream, the temperature is dropping each time, so it got mushy. So it ends up like slopping on the cone. It just doesn't work. So you have to place it into a little tub, a spoon.
Makes sense. Well, Graham, that's just about it then, folks. We've, again, had a good time. We'll be back again tomorrow, 7 o'clock, for the Monday night guest. And from myself and Graham, we thank you for your time and viewing, and thank you for taking part. And we'll see you again tomorrow, Graham, won't we?
Yes, we will. Thank you, everyone, for taking part in this show. It's been really appreciated. Thank you. God bless everybody.
God bless. Goodbye. Good night.
Yeah.